Hello everyone, and welcome to This Nintendo Life. We are at episode 38. My name's Nbz, and on this very special episode of the podcast, I'm joined by none other than my co-host, Bally.
Hello Nbz, I'm still cooling down from the Zelda Symphony.
Indeed, our eardrums are still ringing from the raucous orchestra. Indeed, yes, so Bally and I went very recently to the Zelda Symphony. It took place a few days ago after you're hearing this, and we recorded some stuff there. We did a video. It was a lot of fun. Met some people who listened to the show, which was excellent. And yeah, we'll be slotting that into the show, part of our discussion on the Zelda Symphony. And yeah, we'll be chatting up about music. Music stuff's fun. We love it on this show. We do the jukebox from time to time, so it's always a key component.
That art and music, love it.
Yeah, that's Bally's favourite thing. Nothing
Art
else
and
does
music.
it. Absolutely. Well, Bally, how about you lay the show out for us today? What are we going to be talking about?
So we're going to talk about what we've been playing, then we're going to do a little segment with the recordings of what we got from the Zelda Symphony. That'll be interesting. And then we're on to your emails, because we've got quite a few building up now, so we're going to get through some of those.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we are looking forward to all that stuff, but we're going to kick things off where we mean to, and we're going to begin with some stuff that we've been playing. So, Bally, how about we start with you? What have you been dipping into the last couple of weeks?
So, since doing this podcast, and you've got Steam, and you're pretty on top of the current releases.
I am absolutely in tune with what the masses are playing. If it's not too expensive, I will dive in there and play the new stuff. So
what will happen is a new awesome game comes out, and I'm like, oh, that's great that Nbz gets to play that game. It's not on the Nintendo platform. I guess I can't get it, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could play a game. He's always on the hype train, and I'm always flagging behind.
Well, Bally, look, you like to nip away at your backlog. You gotta
I do.
get rid of things, and so you're not spending money on new games that often. You're always going back and finishing out old ones. So you kind of bring it upon yourself, if I'm frank. Apart from the Steam stuff, which you obviously have no access to.
Yeah. So you downloaded Box Boy like the day it came out, straight after the Nintendo Direct, and I was like, no, Bally, your next game is A Link to the Past. You're gonna stick to that. You're gonna play it. You're gonna enjoy it. You're gonna get through your backlog. And then we were just on Skype a bit, and you were just like, oh, Bally, Box Boy is so good. I'm like, yep, sure it is. Sure it is, Emmy said, I'm sure it is. And that, gradually it was just chipping away at me, eating away at my soul. I was like, I kind of want to play Box Boy. And then one day, this was just last weekend, or maybe the weekend before, I was out on a run, and I thought, I want to play Box Boy. When I get back from this run, I'm going to download Box Boy. And so I did. And I must have played about 5 hours of it, just straight.
So here's the hilarious thing. I come onto Skype that night,
Yes.
and Bally's like, I bought Box Boy. I'm like, oh, cool. How much you done? You in the second world or something? I'm like, yeah. I'm in world 5 right now, and it's it's getting good. It's fun. And Bally's like, yeah, I'm in world 13. Like, Bally, what the fuck? What the fuck have you done? You literally just bought this game today and already have played more than I have in the last few days. So that was crazy. Well, before we go into talking about the game itself, Bally, how about you give the people a kind of description of what Box Boy is?
So it's quite true to the term puzzle platformer, and there's definitely a lot more puzzling than there is platforming, unlike another puzzle platformer that we both played a couple of months ago in Mario vs. Donkey Kong. So
right, absolutely.
You are, I think his name is Cube Boy?
I think it's
QB.
Yeah.
He's called QB.
Yeah.
And so you are a cube with a smiley face, and you can make boxes, and these boxes can come out to your right, to your left, or on top of you, and you can make multiple boxes, and they have to come out in a line like a Tetris piece almost. And once you make your series of boxes, you can then hold it and jump with those boxes onto ledges, and he sort of sucks all the cubes back up, and it's a kind of like a bit like Spider-Man almost. He kind of pulls
It's almost
himself
like
up.
Snake, like on old phones. So you'll basically the technique is called the hook, where you have 3 boxes in like an L-shaped Tetris piece, and it will literally hook onto the edge of a thing. And to get yourself up there, you just basically suck yourself up to the top, and he'll be up the top.
And not just holding on to it, you can actually just throw these Tetris blocks that you're creating and put them into gaps or create bridges or lots of different things, and it's just really, really innovative. And I should say that it's not that's the very basic mechanics at the most simple form, is that you're creating cubes and you're creating these shapes and you're throwing them and hooking onto things, but it gets so much more deep than that, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but maybe I could just say that like there's elements from games like Portal here, where you go through different portals and they reappear and you have to throw your cubes into these portals and they fall out somewhere else in the level. Or there's definitely elements from games like Lemmings, because there's these enemies that you have to control where they go to using your blocks, and there's just so many different mechanics in each world. I should say the whole game has 24 worlds. 24, 27?
22.
22 worlds.
Bally's bad at maths, people. Don't worry,
Very
it's okay.
bad at maths.
I got to pick them up here.
So 22 worlds, and each world has its, maybe bar the last few worlds because they kind of mix things up a bit and they kind of merge elements together, but each world has its own new element and it always keeps it really, really fresh. So, and it's not like bogged down in tutorials or anything. It's just a really quick little, oh, this is a hook, this is how you hook onto a thing. Here are 7 levels with that hook mechanic, go. And it doesn't really hold your hand too much. It just kind of says, here's a mechanic, have a bash at it.
Yeah, I think it's great in that respect, in that there's very little words on the screen. There's hardly any dialogue. It kind of teaches you by showing you, little gif, as it were, of Box Boy like performing the action, and you're like, oh, I need to press this button, and I'll perform that action too. So it teaches in a very kind of simple way, and as you kind of build up these skills, you'll layer them on top of one another, and finally get to the last few worlds where they start taking elements from all these different places and stitching them into one thing, which becomes pretty tricky, and so the difficulty will ramp up. I do have to say that maybe the first 15 or so worlds don't offer a huge challenge. I think it's pretty simple for the majority of the game. When you start getting into the later stuff is when you start hitting a wall and you're like, okay, I could probably get through this level without collecting, the crowns, which are, for all intents and purposes, like the star coins in Mario, where, you have to go out of your way to actually perform the action to get them. But if you want to get those, then yeah, you're going to spend a lot of time sitting there and trying to puzzle them out.
And then we both completed the game 100% in the sense that we completed all 22 worlds and we got all the crowns, didn't we? And there's even more content than that. There's like separate challenge levels that I've not even attempted yet. So I spent 14 hours on this game, and it cost £5.50 or something.
It was £4.50 actually.
£4.50. It's such a good value. And just talking about the value, I wanted to make the point that this isn't an indie game. This is made by HAL. Like, HAL are a really big company. They make Kirby. They made games like Pokémon Snap, the original Smash Brothers Melee. I honestly think that without other indie developers, HAL wouldn't have made a game like this. I reckon maybe 6 years ago, you would have seen a game like this being released as a full retail 35 quid game or something.
You can only imagine it. You think about some of the stuff that got released on DS at retail.
Yeah.
I mean, Yoshi Touch and Go is a prime example of that, where that has like the depth of a puddle, and yet it was released as a full retail.
Yeah, that should be like 5 to 10 quid, but it was £35 at the time. And
if you look at that game these days, it is a prime example of like a mobile game.
Yeah.
Absolutely, a high score based thing where you're going through the same level again and again and again. It would be a 99p download on the App Store these days, but it was a 30 quid release, which was kind of, I don't know, it was a bit crazy at the time. It was unique in the fact that it was using the touchscreen and the 2 screens in a very interesting way, but once you got beyond that, it really was kind of a tech demo-y thing. Yeah.
So it's just really awesome that the sort of the market pressure and the way that the demand works means that in order for, a puzzle platformer, which by and large falls into that category of shorter, smaller experience. And this game is by no means short. Like I said, I spent 14 hours, and I think you'd have to really. I don't think I completed it particularly quickly. I certainly know Nick, he completed it really quickly, didn't he, Nbz?
Yeah, he was about 8 hours, maybe
8 hours.
seven and
Yeah,
a
that's
half.
super quick. And I think you were maybe 12 or so. So
Yeah, I was around 12, 13.
but I mean, 12, 14 hours, 8 hours. That's great value for a £4.50 game. And it's just so great that we now have the eShop, and that a company like HAL could make a game like this. And I actually think, you know what, HAL could have just made this a Kirby game. I think that would have been quite cool.
Yeah, I can't remember what podcast mentioned that would be a possibility.
I think it was Nintendo Voice Chat. They were saying,
Yeah.
Because I think Jose Otero was mentioning that although they've tried new ideas with Kirby, that he felt they needed to reinvent the formula, and that they kind of wasted an idea with this Box Boy idea, and he felt they could have used it for Kirby. So
yeah, I think it would have worked with Kirby if you'd kind of made Kirby a square instead of a circle.
Yeah.
It fits in that realm of like Canvas Curse and Mass Attack and all these kind of different experimental Kirby games. I think it would have worked really well, and you could have thrown some hammers in, the wrenches, the hammers in the wrench. I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say. You could have thrown something into the wheel, like Kirby's, power up sucking abilities to add an extra layer, extra element there.
Maybe it would lose some of its simplicity once you started trying to merge it into a Kirby world, and I do think a lot of the appeal of this game, I thought, was there's really silly little things like the cutscenes and the world that you're in. It's really simplistic. Obviously, it's all black and white. There's no 3D. It's just super simple. And I don't know, maybe some of that style might have been lost if it had been reinvented with Kirby.
Yeah, and also if you put a kind of brand like Kirby on this game, there is no way they're selling it as a £4.50 eShop title.
You're right.
They are
You're right.
either they're going to make it a Mario vs Donkey Kong situation where it's a almost 20 quid thing, or it's going to be a full retail box thing. And for what you get, I can understand them being able to do that, but I think it works better in this situation. Not only that, but Nintendo also very rarely kind of dip into doing new IP and creating new characters. And though Box Boy himself isn't particularly, over the top in terms of creative invention, he's a single box with a smiley face on him. It's nice that they have kind of created a universe for it and made it its own separate thing, so that now it can kind of, push itself forward as its own series. It's kind of building up that Nintendo eShop smaller titles stuff where you have Pushmo and Dylan's Rolling Western, and these are all new IPs, but they are in the smaller space, and I think Box Boy fits into that really nicely. I'd love to see some trophy addition to Smash Brothers for him, for example. Would be great.
I mean, overall, I absolutely love this game. I actually kind of think this is maybe my favorite game I've played that's come out this year so far. Although having said that, I've not played many games that have come out this year. But it's definitely, as much as a game like Captain Toad is great, I think it's almost more charm than it is substance to some degree.
Right.
And I think that this game still has a lot of charm. Not as much charm as Captain Toad. I mean, that game has a serious amount of polish and charm. But I think this game, in terms of that puzzling platforming combination, and Captain Toad to some degree is still a bit like a puzzle platformer, obviously in a 3D space. I just think it outdoes that game. And yeah, I think this might be my game of the year so far. So
yeah, that's
super positive for me.
Very high praise, Bally. I certainly really enjoyed it. There were moments where I definitely got frustrated.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
I think I was hitting my head against the wall. And at those points, I was saying, right, I could go for the crown here, or I could just move on to the next level. And I took the approach, which you didn't, of moving on to the next level and going back for the crowns later, which I think probably helped me in the long run finish the game quicker than you did, because you were telling me that you basically, until you had the crown and had basically perfected the level, you weren't moving on with it. You just stuck your guns, which, fair enough.
Yeah, I do that. I get quite, stuck in the mud about it. I just say like, right, not moving on until I do this. And I think this game works really well for that ethos for me personally. Like, those crowns were tough, but most of them weren't overly tough to the point where I was like literally smashing my head against a brick wall. It wasn't quite that bad. And it definitely was that bad in some stages of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. For all the wrong reasons, I should add. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think I would draw a comparison between these two games here, because in that game I was just not compelled to go and finish those extra levels. You have a different mentality when it comes to that stuff, as we've kind of discussed before. With Box Boy, we were both playing at the same time, and you had finished it and 100%ed it before I had. Maybe if we hadn't both been playing it, I'm not sure I would have gone for the 100%. I'm not sure I've pushed myself through. But because you had done it, and I knew you had done it, I was kind of like, if Bally can do this, I can fucking well do this too. So I decided, like, I'm going to get everything, I'm going to make sure. And I think it was better for it, because there are some of those crowns, once you finally figure them out, there is such a huge amount of satisfaction to thinking like, wow, I actually, I puzzled this out, I sat here and I won, I beat the challenge, my mind is now richer for it.
It's a really good feeling beating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get a nice surprise at the end if you get all the crowns and all the levels. Maybe not spoil it, but
yeah, well, I mean, there's some cool costumes in there that you start off getting like a cool guy hat and glasses, and it kind of goes up from there and ramps up, and they add stuff like music.
The game has its own little shop. It's very cool. It's the menu design and all that kind of things. Really nice, really well polished.
It's super minimalistic, and that's one of those things that is also kind of interesting that I wanted to bring up, is the game doesn't use the 3D effect whatsoever. And I have to say I didn't miss it, because I'm not sure it would have added anything. This game is purely like a 2D experience. There's nothing happening in the foreground or background, and I don't think it needed to be there, so it wasn't. I'm not sure what your feelings are on it, Bally, but I wasn't too bothered that the 3D wasn't present.
Yeah, no, I wasn't bothered really at all. It worked great. But yeah, like Nintendo, next time you have a Nintendo, like, they should just make this a thing every Nintendo Direct, that they always have a high quality, cheaper £4.50 sort of game, and they say at the end of the Direct, available now, go download it, and you're all hyped and you download it and everyone plays it together, and you've not spent much money, but you've still had a really great time, and that's what gaming should be. It shouldn't be these, £40 games that you spend 14 hours on and then that's it done. Like, £4.50 for 14 hours was absolutely great. Like, I want more of this from Nintendo.
Yeah, I certainly think it helps them kind of pad out their lineup in the software department, especially when, Nintendo are getting good indie games, but I think they're getting them late from other platforms, and they're not getting as many as, Sony and Microsoft are. So if Nintendo can kind of have their own strategy of creating their own indie-like games.
Yeah, their own exclusive stuff is cool.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to find this anywhere aside from on 3DS, and so people are going to, if it's a good title, they're going to want to go and download it. So absolutely, if they keep that strategy going, I think it's a winning formula. And, they only have to take small parts of the team, like the rest of HAL is a huge studio. They can be working on something completely different, take, 6-7 people and have them work on a game, and you can come up with something brilliant like Box Boy, which, very, very good. I enjoyed it. Bally clearly enjoyed it a lot. And, it's a good one. We would recommend it. You should go pick it up. Very low barrier to entry price-wise, so there you go. So, Bally, is there anything else you've been playing?
Yeah, I'll talk quite briefly, but I've been playing some more Xenoblade, so I'm now up to about 14 hours of Xenoblade. Actually, just played a little bit more Box Boy than Xenoblade in total, which is interesting. But yeah, really loving Xenoblade. I'm finding that every time the game feels like it's, getting ever so slightly repetitive or slowing down, it'll always hit you with like a massive cutscene, or it'll introduce a new character, or they'll introduce a new character in a cutscene that you've never met before, both hero or villain. And it's just really, really compelling story. And because the story is probably, in my view, the best part of the game, I don't know if I should really spoil anything. I don't know if you would agree, Nbz.
Well, you're not too far in, but I
Yeah.
don't know what you want to say specifically, so I can't really judge, unfortunately.
Well, I'm just going to talk about some of the story points that have come up so far, but I should maybe leave it because I'm sure there will be a few people out there playing the game at the moment. And
Yeah, I mean, you can say kind of the area you're in right now. You're in Satoral Marsh, which is kind of one of the second big areas in the game. Definitely a departure from the green landscapes of Gower Plains, but the area is still almost as large in scope, and certainly some really cool stuff happens there. I'm interested in what you think about the whole exploration element and getting experience for just wandering around. How much wandering around versus just kind of mainlining it have you been doing?
I would say I'm probably mainlining it a bit more than you probably did, Mz. And part of that is because I know that this is an incredibly long game. And I definitely do enjoy it when I wander around. And don't get me wrong, I am wandering around trying to defeat quite a few enemies in between and, grinding a little bit. And enjoying it, not grinding in a negative sense at all. So yeah, I am exploring. One downside I have with the exploration, and this is with the game more widely, is that I just think the map is incredibly clunky. And obviously, being a Nintendo fan, I'm very used to incredibly high quality maps in games like Metroid or Zelda, where they really put a lot of effort in their map design, especially as both those franchises have evolved. I feel Xenoblade is just a bit... It's not clear sometimes how all the maps link up, and while it might be quite good at telling you where you are in one specific area, it kind of won't give you a full flavor of how the area you're in links to the full world, or the full Bionis, which is obviously the big beast that the world is set on.
Well, I mean, I certainly think that if you're looking around up and down and from the areas you're in, you'll get a good sense of where you are relative to different parts of the world. The maps can't really show that because the areas themselves are, segmented off from one another. And I don't know, I think it would be a little tricky. I think it would be actually quite cool if they, for example, made this kind of 3D model of the Bionis, and you could kind of go from area to area and see where exactly you are.
Yeah, I just think a game like Metroid Prime, which is a very intricate three-dimensional world, obviously a much smaller world than a game like Xenoblade, but I just think a game like that does it really well, where they have three-dimensional levels that you can go into the map screen and clearly see where you want to go, which exit leads to where. And I just feel this game could have had a bit more polish in the map design.
I think I would argue against you in the sense that Metroid needs that, because you're always having to backtrack and upgrade. The thing with Xenoblade is it lets you freely skip travel whenever you want, wherever you are. So I don't feel like that's a huge issue, because you're never worried about, going anywhere and backtracking.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So just the nature of it is a little different.
It's frustrating if you want to backtrack and explore, but you by no means even have to do that at all. I just kind of would like the option of doing that, but you're right. If you just follow the main story and play it quite in a linear fashion, you barely really need the maps too much at all. You just kind of follow the markers, and it's all quite simple, and I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice if you could lay down your own markers on the map, like in Skyward Sword. That option was available to you. Although I never really used that. It wasn't a necessary addition in that game.
I really did either.
Yeah, I think that would have been a great thing, and I think Xenoblade Chronicles X actually adds that as a feature, which will be very much needed, I think, in that game, which is 5 times the size of this one. So yeah, I mean, the thing with exploration is that you are leveling up and getting experience for finding areas, and you are going to come across secret places which will give you a bunch of experience, and it's always rewarding to find those. You'll also just unlock new skip travel points, so the further you go and the further away you go, you can always have multiple areas that you can kind of teleport to throughout the different maps, and it just gives you a lot more options, and you're like, oh, I need to go over there, I have a skip travel point right near it, I can zap straight there and get there really quickly. Another
area that I think, and maybe this is just personal preference rather than the game itself, but I'm starting to get. I'm now up to a couple more characters added to my party, and I'm really struggling to enjoy playing as any character that's not Shulk, because I think that Shulk, he's just such a great character. First of all, he has the Monado, God, I forgot the name. The Monado blade, and like the Monado is just such a great weapon because it's got its own set of Monado arts. Shulk is just a way more diverse character, and all his moves, by and large, involve moving around the enemy, making sure you're getting in your back slices and in at the side, using the Monado for like its numerous arts, and all those things are really enjoyable. I just feel that the other characters, especially a character like Ryan, it's not as much fun just being the sponge, as it were.
Just sitting there taking hits.
The guy
basically.
who's just sitting there taking hits, getting off the big hits. Doing a bit of breaks, a bit of topples, but he's not moving around too much, and he's just basically making sure that the enemy's not attacking Shulk. So I'm sure that obviously there are more characters to play as to come in the game, so maybe I'll adapt to some of them a bit more, but at the moment Shulk is just head and shoulders above the rest in terms of how much fun they are to play.
Yeah, well, as I've kind of mentioned before, I never really experimented with any characters.
You just went for Shulk the whole time.
Yeah. Right, and I had, like, my main party was, like, the first 3 characters you get, so I, for a huge portion of the game, didn't even touch any of the new characters until I started watching Chugga Conroy's LP and kind of understanding how they worked and, like, their strengths and weaknesses and, you know, how to play as them. So, you know, you just got a new character recently, so maybe I would say check that point in his LP and see what he says about the character, and maybe you'll get a better idea of how to play as them.
And I did that with like Ryan, and it definitely helped. So I should definitely do that for Dunban.
Yes. A good man who I just, nice segue here, who I just bought a costume for in Super Smash Brothers, because of course the new Super Smash Brothers DLC for Mewtwo just dropped, and I downloaded it while I was away in London on my 3DS, got Mewtwo into the game and played around with him, and you know, that was a lot of fun. I really like the way that Mewtwo plays. I never played with him that much in Melee. He was one of those characters that I didn't really gravitate towards. He's a little floaty and has a lot of issues, but in the 3DS version, I really liked playing as him. I think he's definitely a big difference from Lucario, and I know that Lucario is very much based on Mewtwo when he was introduced in Brawl and kind of set up as the Mewtwo replacement, but I think the two of them are distinguished enough from one another that they can't really be considered clones in any sense. They do share moves like, you know, Shadow Ball and stuff, but I think they're very different. So I'm enjoying that.
I think Lucario changed quite a bit between Brawl and Smash 4 for me. Like
I don't know if he actually did change. It's just the fact that you never played as him that much in Brawl.
But he feels like his auto grab and his aerial moves are really bad, and his natural A combo is really bad. And I definitely remember it being stronger in Brawl.
I don't know. We don't really get into the minutiae of the changes between characters, I guess. We don't know enough about the Smash stuff. But, I mean, have you played as Mewtwo much yet, Bally? I know you just recently downloaded.
Yeah, not much at all. I just did a little bit on the Wii U version, and he feels fine. Like, and I don't know. There's been a lot of hype, and I'm not feeling the hype. I feel like, I don't know. Obviously Mewtwo's not really a character I'm overly, invested in from a gaming perspective. So maybe if it was a character I was more into, I'd be more excited. But I definitely feel more excited about stuff like Mario Kart DLC with like new tracks and that kind of thing. That excites me a lot more than individual fighters for some reason.
Well, I think it depends on who the fighter is, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're not really connecting with Mewtwo and he's not a character you like to play as, then, maybe wait for the next one that shows up. I know Lucas is going to be an interesting one. I actually preferred playing as Lucas in Brawl over Ness, and I am liking playing as Ness quite a lot in the new Smash, so I think Lucas is going to be one that I actually attach myself to quite a bit, and enjoy playing as. So I hope he turns out well, and I'm sure he will. You know, the Smash stuff has been, you know, pretty flawless so far in terms of just polish and execution and everything. So I have no doubt that they'll deliver on all the future DLC characters. And it's also nice that they add Mewtwo into All-Star mode, so when you go through, he is a character there that you fight. You can get the trophies for him in Classic and All-Star and everything. So when I was in London, I basically ran through Classic and All-Star, got those trophies, did a bit of, single player stuff with him, practiced with him, and it's always nice to have that stuff. I feel like I'm more of a person who gravitates towards that single player trophy unlocking stuff than you, Bally. And so,
I mean, the only time I'm playing Smash at the moment is like online with you, and you're kind of appearing with all these skills with a new character, and I'm just back to my own few characters I'm using, and I definitely should try out more characters and play a lot more single player, because I've played hardly any single player of both Smash 3DS and Wii U.
Yeah, well, that's a game that's going to evolve as the future goes on, and I'm looking forward to it. Just like Mario Kart, as you mentioned before, which that new DLC pack is coming out in only a few days, I think. So probably by the time this posts, it should be up.
We'll talk about it next time for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Inclusion of Baby Park again. I'm very excited about that. Always love a bit of Baby Park, and of course, 200. I think 200 CCs on Baby Park is going to be quite the treat, Bally.
There's Big Blue coming.
Right? Yeah, they've announced another F-Zero track, which I always hated playing the Smash stage of Big Blue because it was terrible, and I always died.
It's cool, and it's got good music.
No, you guys kept choosing it, and I hated it every damn time. It was the worst. But it has fantastic. I can't argue the music choice. That is great music on that track. And I think they've done the jazz rendition again, as they have with every Mario Kart track. So looking forward to playing those very soon. So yeah, that should be good. So other stuff I've been playing. I have started playing another RPG, and I don't know how much I'm going to say about it now, but I basically, after I finished Persona 4, there was a hole in my heart, Bally, and it needed to be filled, and I was thinking, what is an RPG that I should play that I haven't played yet, that everyone talks about, and I landed on, of course, the cult classic Chrono Trigger. So this game never actually came out in Europe. On the Super Nintendo. It was Japan and North America, and it was only released, I believe, on the Virtual Console on Wii a few years ago, but there was also a DS version that came out, and so that's the one I'm playing through. That's what people said, and I kind of checked on NeoGAF, and people were like, yep, best version to play today is the DS one, and it's very good. It lets you do touchscreen controls, so it moves a lot of the UI off the top screen, so you don't have the battle window up there. You have just the full battle screen and everything while you're fighting, and also it acts as a map on the bottom, so that's fantastic. It adds all that stuff into it. But I am about maybe 12 hours in, and the people didn't lie, Bally. When Johnny Metz proclaims that Chrono Trigger is his favorite game of all time, that is no bullshit, because this game holds up remarkably well. I think it is it's really nice to look at. It has a fantastic art style, and of course that's partially down to the main artist involved, who I believe was Akira Toriyama, who a lot of people will know from the Dragon Ball series, the main artist and the art style of Dragon Ball made by Akira Toriyama. And same thing here. The main character, Chrono, pretty much looks like a Super Saiyan, except for he has red hair instead of black or yellow. And, his face is pretty much your archetypal Super Saiyan face, which I thought was it's very interesting seeing that Dragon Ball Z art style applied to a completely different universe. And I think it works well in this case and is really nice to look at. I think the DS version is different in the sense that it has some cutscene stuff. It basically has animated shorts. There's no dialogue in them, but it just shows important parts of the game. I'm not sure that was in the original Super Nintendo game. But I'm really loving it so far. The story is fantastic. The dialogue is so well written. It holds up really well. The localization that they did, I'm not sure who it was, but probably no. Well, it wouldn't have been Nintendo internal, because this is a Square game, or Square Enix, should I say? The amazing thing about Chrono Trigger is before Square and Enix were a single company, they were separate. So Square made Final Fantasy, Enix made Dragon Quest. Of course, nowadays we know them as the single entity that they are and the JRPG giant that they are. But at the time, this was like an unprecedented move. They're coming together, these, juggernauts, creating this new RPG. And it is like that dream game. It is this amazing fusion of all these different elements and adds so many new things and so many fresh things that still today are kind of blowing my mind. So I'm loving Chrono Trigger. It is amazing. The story is based around time travel, which is a caveat that I will mention to Bally, because Bally hates time travel or anything, which I don't understand why, Bally. Yeah, I'm not sure you've ever really properly explained why time travel.
Because
is
it doesn't make sense.
No, it does make sense.
Two realities can't exist and cross over at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
Yes, they can. It's a butterfly effect. You step on a dinosaur. No, you step on a butterfly and a dinosaur dies. That's it. That's how it works.
Doesn't work.
But I'm really deep into it now. It's really well paced as well. You're always going from story event to story event, and the dungeons aren't too long. It's actually kind of, I wouldn't say easy, but I think the difficulty is so well pitched. I've never had to redo a boss. I've always been able to beat them first time, but it has been, I'm concentrating on the combat, making sure I'm getting everything down, and it's just been a joy to play so far. I'll definitely keep talking about it and mention some more elements next time on the show, which I'm probably going to finish it by then. But so far, if you have never played Chrono Trigger before, 100% play it on DS and play it now, because it is amazing. It really is, and I'm so glad that it's held up this well, because, geez, it's putting a lot of modern RPGs to shame, quite honestly. It's a joy so far. So that's Chrono Trigger. I will return with more on that next time. But before we close out, I have also been playing a game on a platform that Bally is not a fan of, because we've made it clear on the show that that Bally doesn't like.
Have given in to the enemy.
Yeah, he doesn't like the phone games. I'm not as malicious towards mobile games, though. Of course, I will say that a lot of them are trash.
You've joined the enemy as well.
Yeah, well, you got to do it sometimes. So basically, a couple of weeks ago, I saw on Twitter that at Starbucks, they were giving away free download codes for a game by the name of Monument Valley. Monument Valley, if you don't know, was a game that was released last year, won a BAFTA, the video game BAFTAs, won many awards, I think, and was an iOS kind of puzzle game, and it is very interesting. So I basically went to a Starbucks, happened upon one in London, found that they had download codes just sitting there, and I grabbed two of them. One of them for myself, of course, and one of them with the intended purpose of giving to Bally so that he fucking plays a game on his phone and
I'll play it. Yeah, sure.
Plays a good one.
I'll give it a go.
Yes, and look, saying give it a go isn't anything that you need to worry about, because the game is extremely short. You can finish it in 45 minutes to an hour. Like, it is very, very, very quick,
cool.
But super, super cool. It's really, really fascinating. So, Bally, the way that I would pitch this to you is, those kind of paintings where it's an infinite staircase.
Yep.
Like, it plays with perspective. So, like, it looks like it's going...
Yeah, I've seen some gameplay of Monument Valley.
Yeah, so, like, the idea behind it is that concept of, like, the infinite staircase, which it looks like it's going up, but then it links back in and you're back down at the bottom again. It plays with perspective in really cool and clever ways that link into the puzzle solving. So you're standing on one area and you need to get on top of, like, this rectangular block, but you can't get up on top of it because, there are plenty of meters between you. So you position yourself in an area and you slide the block along to a place where it looks like you're right next to it, and you just step on top of it. And all of a sudden, through the use of perspective, you're moving through the level and getting to places that you couldn't have thought of getting to before. And it looks beautiful. It has this wonderful art style. Especially, I played it on the iPad, and I would, if you have one of those, I'd recommend playing it on a bigger screen, because it does kind of benefit from that. It certainly would play perfectly fine on the phone, and you have an iPhone, Bally, so that's probably the way that you're going to play it. But yeah, it's just wonderful. It's a delight to play. And I was kind of saying on Twitter, this is the first time that I have turned myself into just being embedded into a mobile game, putting headphones in, listening to the soundtrack and the sound design while I'm playing it, and just fully immersing myself into it, because I think it deserves that. I think Monument Valley is one of those special experiences that is so interesting, and I compare it perhaps to Captain Toad in a sense. It has that same charm, but not similar whimsy. It's more kind of melancholy, I would say. It has more of a kind of muted tone to it, but the idea applies that it's these kind of puzzle boxes, as it were, and the levels are kind of localized to those as you figure your way through and go through them. So highly recommend Monument Valley. If you find a code at Starbucks, just pick it up and download it, because it's free. If you don't, then it's very cheap on the App Store. I think it's only about £3, which is perfectly fine. I think that's a good price. And the fact that I got it free and that there's actually an expansion, which is only like £1.50 for the expansion, I'm actually kind of considering just paying the money for that, and that's a great way to reward the developer. I got the game free and I liked it so much that I'm giving them money. I think that's the best way that the kind of free to play space works in mobile. If it's free, but you really enjoy an element of it, you can pay for a thing and make sure the developer gets the money they deserve. And yeah, it's absolutely an experience worth checking out. So I hope, Bally, I'll give you this download code. You can have a go and bring back your impressions and tell me what you thought.
Nice.
It's great. Monument Valley is fantastic, and it deserves all those awards. Really, really good game. So I think that is pretty much going to wrap us up for the first segment. But stay tuned, because we shall return very quickly, sounding maybe a little bit different, in the midst of the Zelda Symphony, where we recorded some of our thoughts at the time and after. So stay tuned. We will be right back. Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. We are now live from the Legend of Zelda, what is it, Symphony of the Goddess? Master Quest? It's got a lot of subtitles.
Got a long name.
There's a lot of names here. Unfortunately, we can't record any footage inside the venue because all these big security guards are, telling us that's not available. We actually ran into one who told us that we couldn't, and I implored him not to take me away.
Got taken away into a dark room, and it was very bad.
Yeah, we had to deal with some stuff there. No, we told him that we weren't intending on any nefarious recordings inside the venue, so that's good. But yeah, it's pretty good. But how about you give me a description of what you see around? You give the listeners an audio treat of the setting.
So yeah, we're in the SSE arena. So yeah, as you can imagine, it's an arena. So there's a massive screen with all the orchestra set up in front of us. And on the screen, at the moment, we're getting a slideshow of different Zelda... It's not even a slideshow, it's actual video footage of different Zelda games. We're looking at Wind Waker right now. It's pretty exciting. The hall is filling up gradually, and there's a whole lot of cosplay going on, like so many people.
Yeah, I saw there was a guy dressed up in a full Skull Kid outfit, which was pretty legit. We tried to wave at him and get him to wave back, but he wasn't agreeing, unfortunately, wasn't being a willing participant there. But I've seen a lot of these Hylian Shield backpacks. I'm not sure where people are getting these. Is this a Club Nintendo thing?
It must be something like that, because we've seen about 20 odd or something like that. There's absolutely loads. But yeah. What songs are you looking forward to, Nbz?
I think I pressed something. No, we'll be okay. I kind of said before in the video, but I definitely want to hear Ballad of the Goddess. That's a big pick. That I think orchestrally, as you know, Skyward Sword, I think was the first Zelda that included an orchestrated soundtrack. Yeah. I believe Twilight Princess was MIDI; it wasn't orchestrated. Yeah. So that's a big one, because it is like one of those first Zelda songs actually composed for a legit symphony. So that is, I'm very excited for that. I think Gerudo Valley is another big pick here. What about you, Bally?
Obviously my favourite game, the Wind Waker, pumped for that, but I do agree with you that Ballad of the Goddess there's something about it that's just such a great tune. No, but I remember back with the Wii, the big deal was that Mario Galaxy was the first ever orchestrated Nintendo game, and obviously Twilight Princess was before, so you're right, Ballad of the Goddess and Skyward Sword was, it was the big deal, the big 25th Zelda anniversary.
They played it at E3. They played it at it was 2010, I think. No, it was 2011's E3, because that was the show before the game actually came out. So 2011's E3, they opened their E3 press conference with some Zelda music from an orchestra. And we thought it would go away, but it came back, and it's come back since for this tour.
So yeah, we should also mention that there's a lot of Majora's Mask plugging going on. So beforehand, all the merchandise for the concert tonight, it was all Majora's Mask themed t-shirts, posters. They were doing a deal. We don't know if you could buy the game or not, but it's quite interesting.
I'm imagining that most people who are coming to a Zelda Symphony already own the game, Bally. Apart from us, of course, because Majora's Mask is one that I am not super fond of. I think I'll probably pick it up on 3DS at some point, but they made enough good changes to it that makes it less frustrating. But yeah, absolutely, some individual Majora's Mask shirts being sold. That was the only design they had. It seems like they're only pushing one and having a single t-shirt design for each leg of the tour. So it looks good. And a lot of street passes. How's your street pass experience been so far, Bally?
I was just saying before, I think the density might even be higher than something like E3, because this is like a saturation of Nintendo fans.
It's a Nintendo event, right? So it's not... I mean, obviously the games press at E3 and everything, a lot of them will have the 3DSs, but, they've been to many E3s with Street Pass and with 3DS. They might be burnt out on it. At this point, anyway, probably a lot of people are burnt out on it. So an event like this, especially in the UK, where Nintendo doesn't have the biggest of followings, very hard to find Street Passes, an event like this is obviously great to pick up loads and just fill up those puzzles. So
yeah, it's so refreshing that the UK we're kind of looked down on by the hierarchy at Nintendo. As we never buy anything Nintendo, but even though we don't buy much Nintendo, they're still bringing us a full Japanese orchestra to come and perform the Zelda Symphony.
Is it a Japanese orchestra? Is that confirmed? Is Japanese Philharmonic?
I'm just guessing, but I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Well, it looks very good. There's a lot of background noise here. Hopefully that didn't mar the experience too much. But we are looking forward to hearing all this music. I guess we'll see you on the other side. We'll do a quick wrap-up, talk about the good parts and everything. And so catch you in a second. Okay, so this is the intermission now. We apparently have a break in the middle of all the music, which is good to reflect on some of the stuff that's already happened. So they played a few medleys. We had some Ocarina of Time, some Wind Waker in there, and they had the opening as well, which is good. I enjoyed the Majora's stuff when it came to Clock Town. That's a very famous part of that game, and also, Nintendo Capri Sun did quite a funny, lyric video on the Clock Town music, which is now embedded in my brain. So every time I hear that, I can't help but hear those lyrics as well. So that was a highlight for me in the Majora's soundtrack. What about you, Bally? What was some good songs that you heard?
Well, definitely, absolutely loved Wind Waker, and I just loved the way the whole thing is set up. So you're getting constant gameplay footage, and it's not just gameplay footage. It's actually in time with the music. Like stuff is happening, cutscenes are happening, and the thematic song of that exact cutscene is being played live at the same time. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's not like the precise music they'd be using at that point in the game, but like the way that it's all synced up and it's all perfectly tied, and they would have had to prepare this ridiculously to have it all sync and all work in action and in motion. So yeah, it's really impressive.
And it's really nice that, I don't know his name, but the guy who organised the whole thing came on the stage to introduce it all, and he was basically saying how this isn't like a normal concert. Like, you're allowed to shout and cheer and get excited about the songs that you like, and it's really interesting just to see like when themes start playing. Like a really popular one was Clock Town and Majora's Mask, and with
Wind Waker got a huge like roar at the end. I think that was one of the biggest noises people made.
Yeah, the Wind Waker medley was nuts, and like so I'm really excited. And Link Between Worlds was fantastic, and I think we're still going to get like Link to the Past, and what else are we missing? Twilight Princess, hopefully.
Yeah. I believe the playlist, or I saw a little thing beforehand on NeoGAF which told us what kind of songs we were going to get, and there was a Twilight Princess medley on there. We also had a boss medley going on, which was cool. Also, a bit of the handheld series getting love on the DS. Was it Spirit Tracks? No, I think it was Phantom Hourglass that was getting love there. So that was great. I think one of the more impactful ones for me was Hyrule Field for Ocarina of Time, because everyone talks about that as such a seminal moment. You walk out for the first time onto this giant field and the music starts playing, and just the connection there is something that I can't really disconnect myself from. That's a fantastic tune.
Yeah, I got that feeling so much with Wind Waker. Like just everything from Outset Island to the boss themes they were playing. It's just so reminiscent, and it's just I'm really happy they brought this here. It's just so well done, and I've not got much more to say at the moment.
Alright, well, that is, I guess, what we're just going to wrap up here for the intermission.
We have some street passes to do.
Yeah, that's too many street passes. We're being drowning in street passes. We'll talk to you again after the show is over. So there we go.
I've just spotted someone with a Majora's Mask dress on.
This is the only place in the world where that would happen, Bally. This place is insanity. Literally, you can pull out a 3DS and no one cares. If you don't have a 3DS out, you are abnormal in this situation, which you can't say many places in the world. But that's what you get when you come to a fan event, and this is a great fan event. Lots of great cosplayers and everything, and yeah, it's looking good. So, all right, we'll see you after we've had this break. Go back to the second half, and yeah, so see you in a second. Alright everyone, we are out and about, walking back to the tube station. Yes, we are indeed. We're on our way back home after Zelda Symphony. Just ran into a couple of people from the old Twitters, which is fantastic, listeners of the podcast and such. So that was awesome. It's always cool to meet people in real life from the internet, because that never happens ever. I think I've done it like once before, and that was a long time ago, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird experience, right, Bally?
Yeah, it's never happened to me before. I mean, when I met Nbz, that was pretty weird in and of itself. But,
Well, you've known me since I was 3 years old, so it's not like you walked into the classroom and all of a sudden, oh my god, this guy. So.
Yeah, no, it's kind of different. No, it was great seeing some people, and the whole symphony. It's just been a great night. We were just saying before, we should mention that we've been filming a little vlog, so that'll hopefully be up on MZ's channel soon. Yeah, we were just thinking, there's very few games out there that you could honestly do a whole symphony before, like we just saw tonight. I thought maybe Final Fantasy. Can you think of any others?
There are definitely big franchises. You could probably do Mario. I think Mario would work, but it's kind of a different tone. Zelda lends itself to that sweeping, majestic orchestral soundtrack. Mario's, I don't know, some tracks fit in there, the Galaxy soundtrack, of course. But aside from Final Fantasy, I'm having a hard time thinking.
Xenoblade would be amazing.
Oh, Xenoblade would be fantastic. Mega Man. Can you imagine Mega Man? It's kind of, taking those tiny tunes, those chip tunes, and blowing them up. But I think that could potentially, what they did with Smash Bros. And stuff.
Yeah, but at that point, it's almost like a rock concert. You
Right.
need a few electric guitars and things. Fantastic night. And it was just so great that they really did sync up the footage and it all made sense. And you always knew what game the music was from. And it was just so well done.
Yeah, I have to say, for me, probably the standout was Twilight Princess. They did a medley for Twilight Princess, and I think it was probably the loudest the orchestra got the whole night. It
had the most singing. Sorry, I just wanted to say, I thought Twilight Princess definitely had the most vocal singing, because we should mention that there was a full choir here, and I was never really expecting that, but obviously Zelda music has tons of singing in it, and I don't really know what they're singing. It's often like gibberish or just sounds, so it's just like Lars and Dars.
No, because I was saying that it was a little disappointing that we didn't get the Yuga, 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 Yuga from Link Between Worlds, which I think that's the first boss battle you have with him, and that theme comes in, but Twilight Princess was, for me, Twilight Princess is a game, it's the first Zelda game I ever completed. So it's very special for me, of course I have my Let's Play of that's never going to end. It just hits me in this nostalgic place. I think I know the music of Twilight Princess so much more intimately than the music of other Zelda games, and especially that version of Hyrule Field, when that kicked in, I got an even stronger emotional response than I did for the Ocarina of Time one, for example. So.
Yeah, definitely my highest emotional response was Wind Waker. I think I said that before, but just what a great night. And we were just saying we're never in an area or go to things that have, tons of Nintendo fans and gaming fans in general. And it was just so cool to see so many people and just so many 3DSs like we were saying before. It's cool to know that whole community is here in the UK, and you never really see them normally.
You know what it reminds me of, Bally? It reminds me of Indians in Scotland, because the Indians in Scotland, I never see any of them anywhere.
But there's loads.
Well, basically, as soon as they have a festival like the Mela, which happens every year, you go out and Indians are just streaming out of the places. They're everywhere. So it kind of felt like that, people are going to keep themselves in their houses, clearly playing their 3DSs, not taking them out in public, but they did here, and it was pretty cool. Bally, do you know what your Street Pass count is so far?
Just tonight, it's been as many as I've wanted it to be. It's basically when I can be bothered to access my 3DS, it's just, oh, you've got 10. Oh, you've got 10. So I think I've gone through about 40 to 50 maybe tonight.
Yeah, it's actually kind of overwhelming, I would say. It's one of those times where you kind of understand the plight of those people at E3 who are complaining about the fact that Nintendo didn't let you store up to more than 10 Miis each Street Pass. It's it would be great if they stored 100, because then I probably wouldn't have to check it the whole time and I could go through it at home. But I really felt that plight tonight, which was interesting. So overall, fantastic stuff. Bally, final thoughts?
Overall, just unbelievable. Really want to do something like this again. Definitely.
Yeah, I'd love to, go to a convention or something. I'm sure there's stuff in the UK like Eurogame, and that's something. But maybe one day flying over to the US, do a bit of E3. Don't know. We'll see.
One day we're going to E3. It has to happen.
It has to happen. But until then, thank you for listening. I think we're going to pop this in as the second segment, so we don't have to bother with nonsense plugging while we're walking back to the tube station here. So we'll see you after the break for some emails. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. It is time for some emails, but before we get into the emails we have lined up for you today, I think it's important to let you know that if you want to send an email into our show, the email address is thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Send in your emails. We love answering them, and we hopefully you guys like to hear them as well. So, on to the first email. It's from World's Boss. Hey guys, me again. I was very interested to hear about your ideas for changing up the show. They all seem like great ideas. Now on to my questions. Have either of you played any of the Batman Arkham games? Just as Bally's first open world game was AC4, mine was Batman Arkham City. It blew my damn mind. I also recently purchased Arkham Origins Blackgate in the eShop sale, and have to say that I am suitably impressed with the quality of that game as well. Although I would steer clear of the Wii U Arkham Origins, that is a bit buggy and isn't quite as polished. Considering how cheap both of these games are, I highly recommend them if you haven't already given them a go.
Right, so we should take this email, this question first, then we'll move on with the rest of his email. So, Bally, I know that you've been kind of eyeing up the Wii U version of Batman Arkham City for a while now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super keen to play it. I've heard great things about it. I know the Wii U version's a bit weird, and it's got those added blue... What do you call them? Things around.
I don't know. Blue stuff.
Blue stuff. It's got magic blue stuff in it. So yeah.
The Wii U box is blue. All the Wii U boxes are blue. So they got to add blue things to the game. I don't know. It's something to do with his fighting style. I have no idea.
Well, yeah. So I'm not really bothered about that, but I definitely want to play it, and it's the only system I own that I can play it on. So yeah, I'm definitely keen to pick it up for maybe like a tenner online, hopefully, or something like that.
Yeah, people complain about the lack of third-party support on Wii U. At least it was nice that at the launch of the system, we had stuff like
they really
Batman.
pushed it. It was a big part of that E3 press conference when I think it was the last E3 press conference they ever did, actually.
I believe so. Yeah,
when they launched with stuff like Nintendo Land, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so Assassin's Creed 3 and 4 having those on the system is great, and it allows people like Bally. I know there are not many of the people out there who are like Bally who only own Nintendo systems.
I'm a rare breed.
A rare breed indeed. But it's good because it allows people to get opened up to different experiences that they never would be able to play otherwise. And I know that was great for you with Assassin's Creed. So. That's fantastic. For me, I actually own Batman Arkham Asylum and City. I have Arkham Asylum on PS3. I have Arkham City through PlayStation Plus on PS3. I also own both of the Game of the Year editions on Steam. So you would think that there's no excuse for me of not played them.
And you've hardly played it.
I've hardly played them. So I don't know. It was a weird situation because I bought Arkham Asylum really cheap secondhand in a game store. When I got my PS3, it was very kind of late in the life cycle, and everything was super cheap. I could pick up games at a really low price, and so I bought that for a tenner and popped it in. And for 2 days, I played like 2 or 3 hours each day, and I really loved it. I really like Arkham Asylum. And then I can't remember what happened. Either I had to go back to uni, or I think Uncharted 2 went down in price, and I think around that same time I picked that up. So I popped in Uncharted 2, and Uncharted 2 is incredible, and one of my favorite games on PlayStation platforms, one of my favorite games ever, actually. And I kind of just mainlined through that and forgot about Batman, and just never went back to Batman, apart from here and there, and I didn't play too much of it afterwards. I think I want a fresh start on Arkham Asylum. I might just hook up the Steam version and get that going at some point, and I think it'll probably look nicer on my PC and stuff and run better, so I'll do that, and I'll get through that, and I'll play Origins is the one that people say is rubbish, but I'll play that in City. I don't know when, but it's my backlog is stupid, Bally. It's ridiculous. I have too many games.
I know you're interested in potentially picking up a PS4 at some point. Are you maybe going to try and play them before what's that game called? Black Knight?
Arkham Knight. Arkham is the key phrase here.
I knew it had to be dark or black or Arkham. I don't know. His Batman's all those things.
Exactly. Gotham Knight. No, not quite.
It could be anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that game comes out just before E3. I'm not going to own a PS4 until Uncharted.
That's very soon, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very soon. So even by the time I pick up a PS4, Arkham Knight will probably be a low price. I absolutely want to play Asylum and City before I play Knight. I think that would be the proper thing to do. And Asylum and City are very different games because the first entry into this series was way more Metroidy. It has a similar kind of map structure, the idea of getting power-ups and backtracking, the whole thing about, just having a more kind of closed experience rather than an open world. City is basically an open world game with some of those elements thrown in. So they are very different. They're different experiences. A little unfortunate that you won't be able to experience Asylum because I feel like maybe that's the one you would enjoy a bit more as someone who's a fan of Metroid Prime. I think Asylum is very Metroid Prime influenced in many ways. But I will get back to those games. They are very, very good, and I really enjoyed what I played. I don't know, for some reason fell off the wagon. But we'll probably talk more Batman in the future. I'm sure when Bally picks his up on the Wii U, we will have some chat. So there we go.
So, second question from World's Boss. This is a question that was sent into IGN's Game Scoop about 5 months ago, but I thought it was worthy of posing to you fine gents. If you could go back in time to the NES era and take only one game back with you, showing to devs of the time to potentially shape the future of gaming, which one would you choose? Good luck answering this one. I broke my brain trying to figure it out. As always, keep it up, guys. This is my favorite podcast, World's Boss. P.S. Several months late, but my favorite game of 2014 was by far DKC Tropical Freeze. So happy that Bally was able to pick it up and give it a go. Good to hear. Great game.
Yes, Bally, big fan there of that. So, Bally, you're banned from answering this question because you don't like time travel and you think it's stupid. So
It is stupid.
No, but it's a very interesting question. I'm a listener of Game Scoop as well. I remember when this question was brought up a few months ago. I'm kind of thinking from it from two perspectives. Number one, what game would blow their mind when you went back and showed it to them? And number two, I can't count clearly. What game would you show them in order to shape the future? I think he wants to more know the shape of the future, but I'd be interested in hearing the other perspective as well, Bally. What do you think here?
I think in terms of shaping the future, and it would definitely blow their mind as well. You suggested you might have had the same idea, but I would definitely go with Wii Sports.
Really? That's a very interesting one.
Why were you gonna? What were you gonna? Well, anyway, in terms of a game that is incredible, would blow their minds. I would say something graphically impressive. I'd want to say. So, I don't know. I even want to say Wind Waker HD because I just think that looks amazing. But I know there are much better looking games. I just can't think of any that are coming to mind right now.
I kind of want to rewind here and talk about your Wii Sports example. Sure. Would you really want Wii Sports to be a thing that was shaping the future of games so that they would go in the direction of motion controls in the past, even faster than they did in present day, I guess?
Yeah, why not? I think Wii Sports is a great game, and because of the hype behind it, I almost feel like that was part of the reason it was such a flash in the pan, in that you can't sustain that wide of an audience for that long. And if game developers had been involved in something motion related from a much earlier stage that wasn't perhaps aiming at such a wide market in the way that the Wii did, that perhaps you could have a far more solid experience and more developers working on different games, and you could have done some really cool stuff with it. Maybe that I'm worried that it's just going to kind of fade away a bit, and maybe it's not going to fade away because virtual reality is becoming such a big deal that motion controls and that kind of thing might rear its head again.
That's interesting. Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, in the sense that if they saw motion controls and really focused on doing that as a core element of games, it wouldn't have been this kind of one-time hit.
Yeah.
It may have evolved into being a much more interesting and integral part of how we play games today, and perhaps by the time we reach this era, it would, work functionally way better than it currently does. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I never would have thought of that. So completely out of
That's
left
interesting
field.
because we thought we were going to have the same idea, and now we haven't. So I'm intrigued to
Yeah,
see what you think about what you would choose to show them.
Well, I think on the Nintendo side, I would go back and show them Mario Galaxy. I think that is a game that shows a level of creativity and just imagination and just craziness that would perhaps spark a lot more of that in terms of future game development. I'm not really sure like specific things it would cause. Maybe it would mean that the 3D platformer sustained as a genre for longer than it has, because quite honestly, Nintendo are the only people doing it these days. But as something not only that would blow their mind, but also would potentially shape the future, I think Galaxy is an interesting choice. And I think I would pick that over Mario 64, because I feel like Galaxy takes Mario 64 and just evolves it to the next level, and does that in a really great way. So I think that's the one.
I was thinking about something like Ocarina of Time actually as well, but I mean that's other than turning an existing concept into something that's three-dimensional, maybe it's not actually evolving as much as 2D Mario did to 3D Mario.
Yeah, exactly. It's very different, I think. I think when you look at Metroid and Zelda, when they transferred from 2D to 3D, there wasn't a huge difference in terms of gameplay, right? You're generally doing the same stuff. Whereas Mario completely kind of tipped the scales on its head, and platforming in 3D is a vastly different thing to platforming in 2D. So, absolutely. That's an interesting one. I think another couple of games that I would mention, not from Nintendo, but just in terms of shaping people's imaginations, something like the original Portal is a crazy interesting, another very creative game, and I think showing something like that to people would really get those juices flowing as well, and shape how things would go in terms of the puzzle genre and how that would change. Another one for different reasons would be, I've mentioned it already, but Uncharted 2, for just the cinematic nature of what games have become these days, and how these experiences are so bombastic and incredible and practically movies at some points. And Uncharted 2, I think, is like one of the very first examples of that done and executed on an excellent level. So yeah, I think I'd choose those two as well to take back in time. But yeah, that's a great question. It's really an interesting one to think of, and yeah, I think we get some good answers there. And nothing else you want to say, Bally? There, I think,
you get a pass this time with the time travel question, but you're treading a fine line there.
Oh dear. Let's not go back to that.
But it was a good question. Thanks very much, What's Boss. So we now have a question from Tom. Hello, Mr. Bally and Mr. Nubs. You can call me Tom, and I hail from an Asian country far east by the name of Indonesia. I just want to say I am a huge fan of your content, and please keep up the good work. I have 2 questions if that's not too bothersome, so here goes. Number 1. As an extremely audio-oriented person, may I ask for recommendations for any Nintendo game soundtracks or game soundtracks in general, preferably more upbeat variety if you don't mind. Well, Tom, as someone who's also of the goodness sake, as someone who's also of the audio-oriented variety, I would definitely say, and following the Zelda Symphony, just pick up a Zelda game, and any of those games, fantastic music.
Yeah, that's the obvious choice, considering the episode at the time we find ourselves in, of course. We just sat there and listened to a giant orchestra bombastically play some of the most epic and grandiose music in video games, so yeah, I can get behind that too. In terms of other Nintendo soundtracks specifically, I would go back to classic Mega Man games. I know they're not made by Nintendo, but they were on old Nintendo systems. The soundtracks to both Mega Man 2 and 3 are fan-fucking-tastic. Some of the most consistently good video game music in any any genre, any game of any time period. Maybe don't hold up so well 8-bit wise these days. If you want something that's more kind of modern, then maybe it's not for you, but I'm sure you can find remixes out there and modern imaginings, especially Smash Brothers has taken a few Mega Man tunes and kind of brought them into the modern era, so those are good picks as well. I know, Bally, you're a fan of the Donkey Kong soundtracks as well.
I think Tropical Freeze has a pretty special soundtrack, and don't listen.
Would you say it is the best soundtrack of the year, Bally, of 2014?
Don't get me started. If you haven't listened to the Giant Bomb episode where they're talking about the Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze soundtrack, and Dan Reichart is desperately trying to find tracks that instantly impress the other bomb crew, then it's pretty hilarious, because they just don't side with him that any of the tracks are that great. And I can see where they're coming from, because I don't think it's a game where you can just listen to a single track and be like, wow, that's a great track. I think it is the whole thing together. I can't really remember the names of specific songs I like, but do check out the soundtrack for that on YouTube or somewhere, because it's a really, really good soundtrack.
Yeah, and this is obvious, but I'm just gonna say it because it bears repeating. Xenoblade Chronicles has literally my favorite soundtrack in video games. I'm not sure there is anything that surpasses it. It is astonishingly good.
I love how it's both classical and rock together.
Yeah, and it kind of fits with the theme of that game being, fantasy and sci-fi kind of merged together in this creative way. The music mirrors that exceptionally well. And you kind of get that tonality between the two kind of areas and everything. So that is, without a doubt, I've written essays to the Xenoblade soundtrack before. It's fantastic background music, fantastic just listening to music. And there's been a resurgence recently of people discovering Xenoblade for the first time, and people will now all realize how fantastic that soundtrack is. So there you have it. Go listen to that as well. So there you go. There's some recommendations for you.
So the second part of his email: seeing as Nbz is an avid podcast listener, and perhaps Bally as well, do you perhaps have any recommended Nintendo podcasts and Nintendo news sources in general? I'm sorry if this is too much to ask, but I'd highly appreciate your input on the matter. As always, thanks for providing consistently excellent content, and cheers.
Well, thank you very much for that email. It was very politely worded.
Incredibly polite, Tom. Thank you.
Aside from Bally, tripping over himself, being unable to read it, it was very well written as well. So, I think the fault lies with Bally there.
Yep, always does.
Always does. Bally, we're both massive podcast fans. We've mentioned this many times before. Podcasts are literally my life. So let's mention some Nintendo ones. How about you kick this off? Because I've got some different ones I think I'd probably throw into the ring.
So the king of all Nintendo podcasts, it's this little podcast called This Nintendo Life. No, I'm just joking. Hey. But no, definitely the podcast that got us into podcasts, and definitely the podcast you showed me that got me into podcasts, Nbz, is Radio Free Nintendo. They've been going a really long time, since about 2008, I want to say. Great show. We must admit, the structure of our show is very similar to theirs. They always talk about what they've been playing. They'll always do a few emails, and they talk about lots of Nintendo news that's happening at the time. It's four guys, Johnny, John, James, and Guillaume. And, they got a really good relationship going, and it works well. It's weekly, and I'd highly recommend it, as I'm sure you would as well, Nbz.
Yeah, look, every podcast on NintendoWorldReport.com in general is really great. They have kind of a suite of podcasts. I'd say that's probably the prime content on their site, and what drives a lot of people to go there is their podcast stuff. And for good reason, because these guys, they're masters at their craft. They put a lot more effort into the creation of podcasts than any other site that I know. They always have chapter artwork, and they break the audio formats down into multiple different types that you can download if you don't have the options for other ones. It's just a really well-run ship, well-edited stuff, really informative, very, very well laid out in general, and I could not more highly recommend RFN. The podcast is great. They also have a show called Connectivity, which is more of different voices from the website and different kind of topics. They usually cover a lot of eShop games. They talk about all the new releases as soon as they come out, because they have lots of people to cherry pick from. Radio Trivia Podcast Edition is like a music-based show that they do, which is basically where we stole the idea for Jukebox from. So look, let's be honest, our show is like a patchwork of things that Nintendo World Report do, and it's a good model to follow. So
and one day we'd love to get a guest from Nintendo World Report, so
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully look out for that in the future.
Yeah, maybe, we'll see. What about other podcasts? What other ones can you mention, Bally?
Definitely Nintendo Voice Chat is a really strong one. Often a bit shorter. They're quite strict on staying to, about an hour. They rarely go to about an hour and a half. So they're the main Nintendo podcast for IGN, hosted by Jose Otero. He's a really great guy, really knows his stuff. They don't really talk so much about what they've been playing. They're very kind of news focused, which is great because they're always normally playing the new releases. And
I think IGN generally is a big news focused site.
Yes.
They focus a lot on that stuff, and it's always good to get that industry insight as well, because these guys are let in early on playing games, and they go to previews and stuff, and they can always talk about their concerns, worries, thoughts, and opinions on all the upcoming Nintendo hardware, software.
They're definitely the podcasts I listen to who are the closest to Nintendo and can give you the most accurate, informed information.
Yeah, certainly. They do a great job. We're on a tight ship there. Obviously, we had John on last week from the Nintendo Show, and that's a really good podcast to listen to as well. I think they get into a lot of nitty-gritty talking about games, just like we do. So if you like, going in depth on specific titles, they also play a lot of games. I know John plays lots of games, so he always has a lot to talk about. So if you want a varied lineup of everything that comes out on the Nintendo eShop and all the big releases, they're a great source to go to. I think another one that I would mention that I listen to is the Game Life podcast from Wired. This is run by Chris Kohler, who is pretty much a Nintendo expert. He's very well informed on Nintendo as a company. He's been around the industry for a very long time, and though the Wired Game Life podcast is kind of all consoles, it's a multi-format podcast. There's a heavy Nintendo focus. There's a lot of amiibo talk as well, because he is a huge collector. He does a show at PAX every year called the Games Antique Roadshow, which basically he gets people to come up on stage and show their really rare gaming gear off, and basically has a panel of experts who evaluate how much everything is worth and say, how rare this stuff is. So he knows a lot about classic Nintendo stuff and is really good at analyzing, their modern stuff. Talks a great deal about, what they're doing in the mobile space and what he thinks they're going to do. So the Wired Game Life podcast is fantastic for that. I'm trying to look through my other ones as well.
Giant Bombcast.
I wouldn't say Giant Bomb are particularly great for Nintendo.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
I think, they have advocates for Nintendo, like Dan Reichert is a big Nintendo fan, but when it comes to breaking down the news and being informed on Nintendo, I just don't think that they have that. Like, they didn't even watch the Nintendo Direct. They just get it from press releases and don't know half the stuff that goes on. They're not a fan of a lot of Nintendo franchises. And they're great and they're hilarious, but if you want good chat about Nintendo games, I wouldn't point you to the Bombcast. I'd point you to other places. Though I just recommend it in general. If you just enjoy video game talk, I think it's just a great avenue for that overall.
I think that one quite strong Nintendo-based podcast that NWR do, and it's really important because Nintendo is a Japanese company, and so many of their influence are very based on Japanese culture and the way the Japanese people live their lives and things like that. So I think the Famicast is a great podcast because these are English speaking people who live in Japan, talking about Nintendo in Japan, and like it's really great because they'll explain all the latest releases of games that are months away from coming out in the West, and it's just really interesting getting a different take on things.
Yeah, I forgot to mention the Famicast when I was talking about the Nintendo World Report podcast, but yeah, they are fantastic. And in fact, the game that you heard us talk about at the beginning of this podcast, Box Boy, I heard first about on the Famicast. It's called Hako Boy in Japan, and they talked a lot about it at the time, and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. I hope it comes out soon, and it did end up coming out in the West. And I hear a lot about all these other games like Yokai Watch and all this other stuff from Japanese podcasts. The other Japanese podcast I listen to is 8-4 Play, which I know Bally used to listen to but kind of fell off a little bit. They are big Nintendo fans. They also talk a lot about kind of Bloodborne and Dark Souls and that stuff. So I think I get lost in the weeds sometimes with them. But when they talk about Nintendo, they are big advocates. And they're also, a company which helped Nintendo localize games because they are a localization house. They translated Fire Emblem Awakening for the West, and they did a fantastic job with it. So they have great insight, and they're always fun to listen to. So yeah, I think that's a good rundown. There's lots of stuff for you to mull on there, lots of recommendations. So I hope you go out and try some of those.
It's a nice summary of all our rivals.
Yes, exactly. so go review us, not them. All right, that's the message we take away.
And our final email this week is from Eldrick. Hey Nbz and Bally, in your discussion on VR and Nintendo's role in it, Nbz made an interesting point about how the vast majority of Nintendo games are in third person. I never really took note of this until Nbz pointed it out. That got me thinking about Nintendo games in the first person that could utilize VR, and one sprung to mind immediately: Pokémon Snap. Why is there not a Pokémon Snap on the Wii U yet? And if Nintendo goes into VR, how great would a VR Pokémon Snap game be with the gamepad as a peripheral?
Well, it is certainly an obvious first-person Nintendo game that did we bring it up? I'm not sure we
No,
even
I
did
think we forgot to. But yeah, no, I absolutely love Pokémon Snap. It was the first console game I ever bought.
That's kind of crazy. I didn't think. I thought it was Pokemon Stadium as opposed to Pokemon Snap.
No, it's
but
definitely
I guess,
Snap.
Yeah, I guess that was the way that it went.
It was actually it was new when I bought my N64. It was at the very end of the N64's life cycle, and got it on its launch with a very old N64.
Yeah, well, at least you owned one. I didn't at all. I of course had to stand by the Burger King where they had this Pokemon Stadium. That's how I got my N64 fix, aside from going to your house and playing it. I think Pokemon Snap is something that lots of people have shouted from the rooftops about coming back for a long time, and now so more than ever, just because of the nature of Nintendo's current hardware, with Wii U being such a perfect platform, it seems, for that kind of experience. Very recently, they announced in the Nintendo Direct the new Fatal Frame game coming from Japan, and that game is based around cameras and uses the gamepad as a camera, obviously in a horror setting to see ghosts, something that I am, not interested in whatsoever, and Bally isn't either, because we're just giant pussies and we're scared of fucking everything. But that thing could very potentially be linked to a Pokemon Snap game and work extremely well. You have the gyro sensors, the motion controls. I thought one of the really interesting things about the Wii U that they never really delivered on was that idea of having the gamepad situated as a window into the entire game world, where you could kind of spin it around and look up and down and back behind you, and so the TV was the kind of single conduit in front of you, but if you moved the gamepad around and saw behind you and underneath, you'd be able to interact with other elements of a game world. And if that would possible in Pokemon Snap, I think that would be a fantastic integration of the technology. And really the only other way I've seen it being used is on like the Google Street Viewer app that they have on Wii U, which is really cool because you're basically having these full 3D videos and stuff. That I think that's a different app, but then also 3D just views of Google Maps that you can just basically experience by moving the gamepad around. I remember just thinking about that concept and getting really excited, and yet nothing on Wii U has done that so far, which I'm kind of disappointed with.
Yeah, and I think a big point of Pokemon Snap is like since they released the original quite a few Pokemon have come out, and it might be quite difficult to work out which ones you include, which ones you cut out, because obviously you can't do all of them. And then just creating the new levels. I mean, it is on rails, and there's not many games these days that are on rails in the same way.
The one thing that really reminded me very recently of Pokemon Snap was the on-rails levels in Captain Toad.
Yes.
Where you were kind of moving the gamepad around to hit, question mark blocks and get the stars, and basically like a first-person shooter, but a similar concept, that you can't really control your speed, you can't really control where you're going, but you're always looking around, moving the gamepad, making sure it's the right angle with the gyro controls, and hoping that it hits and you're able to get all that stuff. They could totally implement that. It seems like it's been working for them in a game like Captain Toad, so...
And definitely in our minds, Nbz, Pokemon is a franchise where, for us, the spin-offs have become incredibly, what's the word, just a bit monotonous, obvious, simple. These games like
fucking boring. They're fucking terrible.
Terrible.
They're just look, let's just call a thing what it is. The Pokemon spin-offs, Pokemon Rumble, the Pokemon Shuffle, all this fucking horse shit. It is goddamn awful and a disgrace, and Pokemon should be put to better use and used on interesting games, not this fucking shovelware.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna look. You just gotta say it straight out.
And honestly, when
it's bad.
Pokemon Snap comes out on the Wii U eShop, which I'm sure it will soon because it was on the Wii, honestly, give it a go if you haven't. If you're a Pokemon fan who missed out on the original N64 version of Pokemon Snap, you will absolutely love it. It's a really refreshing look into the world of Pokemon, and you don't without any of the battling, obviously, and it's nice. It was really refreshing at the time, and I'd highly recommend it.
Absolutely. Well, I will be downloading that when they put it on the Wii U eShop, because I own the Wii game, thanks to you gifting it to me at some point back in the past on the Wii. So maybe I'll be talking about it in the future. Just have to get Nintendo to actually release Virtual Console games, maybe.
One a week.
One a week. The slow churn continues. But maybe soon. Who knows? All right. Well, I think that wraps us up for emails this week. But Bally, please do tell the people again where they can send them to get them read out on the show.
Send all your emails to thisnintendolife@gmail.com. Keep them coming. We always want more. And tell us where you're from. We love to know where you're from. And also...
Bally loves to know where you're from. I don't give a shit.
You love to. I think it's interesting. And yeah, tell us how... the name you would like us to call you, because sometimes we're a bit unsure about which names to use and which ones to not use.
Yes, exactly. So that's always a helpful thing, and just makes our job easier. And you want to make our job easier because it makes for a better show. And then Bally doesn't have to trip over himself all the time, even though inevitably it's going to happen anyway.
Always going to happen.
Look, if you listen to the podcast, you just it comes with all the bruises and all the knocks, so take it as it is. Okay, well, I think that is going to close out our show this week. Before we go, let's do some plug-in and talk about stuff. Bally, we asked people a few weeks ago to review us on iTunes because we're looking to promote the show more and get more ears listening to it, and the best way to do that was through iTunes reviews. So how about you talk a little bit about that and what people have been saying?
Yeah, we've had some fantastic reviews. I think I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9 reviews since the start of March, which is just amazing.
And we should mention that's only in the US.
Yes.
So there may have been people who have reviewed us in other regions. Unfortunately, the way that iTunes works is that unless we want to go through every country in the world and find out, specifically whether someone reviewed us or not, we are not going to be able to do that. So if you have reviewed us and you're not in the United Kingdom or in the United States, then do email us or let us know via Twitter or something so that we can thank you for that, because otherwise we're going to spend our whole lives going through iTunes trying to find what people have said. So do that.
So I'm going to quickly reel off the names of everyone who's reviewed us on iTunes, because I think it's quite important to show our thanks. So we have Dan Webb, Latter Day Rasta, Jacob Boyles, BRNGRC. I can't quite pronounce that, I'm afraid.
I'm not sure anyone can pronounce that. But
Nicholas Moyle, Eternal EAB, Art Spot, Drizdman55, and Code 3x6, 3 times 6, 3x6. Well, one of those.
Wait, it wouldn't be a podcast without Bally butchering people's names, so there we have it.
It's the number 3 and then an X and then a 6. What am I meant to say?
I don't know. Some names online, Bally, are just, quite frankly, unpronounceable. But a huge thank you to all of those people. They all actually gave us 5-star reviews, which is flattering and very nice, and some really well-written stuff from people as well. So we are really thankful for people for doing that. Thank you so much. Continues to help us grow the show and have more people tune in every time we put one out. So excellent stuff. Keep it going, and we will continue to thank people on air as long as they review us on iTunes. So yeah, if you want to hear your name read out on the show, that's a very easy way to do it. So there's your opportunity. Okay, let's plug ourselves before we get out of here. Bally, where can people find out about you and what you do on the internet?
My Twitter account is at Ballyman91, BALLYMAN91, and that's also my name on the Miiverse. I'll hopefully be posting some more about Xenoblade, and I'm gonna get going on A Link to the Past. I've decided, I've just come off the Zelda Symphony, all hyped. Gonna give that game a go.
Excellent. Very good Link to the Past medley that was played during that as well. So certainly got the juices going for you. Obviously I'm going to keep playing Chrono Trigger, but you can hear about me talking about that game on Twitter. If you follow me, I am at Lord Nbz. Unfortunately, I can't post on Miiverse. It's a DS game, so that's a little bit of a shame. But I'll be talking about my experience as I continue to make my way through that RPG. It's fantastic, and I'm enjoying it. And you can also, if you want, follow me on the Miiverse, which is Lord Nbz as well. You can also follow us as a podcast on Twitter. Where can they do that, Bally?
The podcast account is at TNL Podcast. That's TNL Podcast. We're almost up to 200 followers, so make sure you tell your friends about our podcast account. A podcast Twitter account. Because it's just a really great place to go to hear about updates on the show. We've got a Zelda video coming out soon from the Zelda Symphony, hopefully. So I mean, we always keep updates going with the Twitter account, so make sure you follow that and tweet at us. Tell us what you think of the show. We might give you a retweet. So
absolutely,
go do that.
Great way to interact and to ask us questions and all that good stuff. You can find the show in many places. You can go to iTunes and download it there and subscribe. That's an excellent way to get it. We're also on other platforms. We're on SoundCloud. Unfortunately, I've realized that on SoundCloud, you need to be a premium member to upload a certain number of hours of audio listening. And so what the system has done is that it's basically made episodes that are not the most recent episode unavailable. So you'll only be able to get the most recent episode on SoundCloud, but I guess it's better than nothing. At least it is offered there. So this
come to iTunes if you want the backlog.
Exactly. All the episodes are on iTunes. You can find us on Stitcher Radio, which is an app that we are available on as well. And of course, as we said before, keep reviewing us on iTunes, keep doing that great stuff, and we will be very thankful for it. What do you say we close the show out, Bally? We've rambled on long enough and said our piece. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back at you in a couple of weeks' time, but until then, that is going to be us, and we will see you very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
The musical interludes used in today's show were all taken from the Legend of Zelda 25th Anniversary Special Orchestra soundtrack. Copyright 2011 Nintendo. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, that's what I was doing. I was singing the dun, 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 I was saying the lines and then singing the music in between.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's like, you turned her against me! Dun, 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 dun.
Anakin,
You have done that yourself! Dun, 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 dun,
Anakin, I have the higher ground. Don't try it. And then he goes, ah! He gets all his limbs cut off.
Yeah, great
Apart from
plan,
one.
buddy. Which was already mutilated in the first place, so now he is more machine than man.
Yeah.
Yep. Beautiful.